everyone, Josh here with Excess Canes, bringing you all another Awaken Chaos Area video. And today, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing a versus series. Now, this is not going to be like our free-to-play series where we actually have episodes, because there's actually no continuity between any of these episodes. It's just going to be us breaking down two units versus each other, trying to find comparisons in who actually is better than the other, or similar roles that they have on your team going forward. Now, what I want to do with this is let you, the audience, my viewers, in the comment section below, or even DM me on Twitter or whatever, or at me on Twitter, let me know the two units that you want to see head to head in these types of videos going forward, and the more popular choices, I'll take those and turn those into future episodes. So let's have a lot of interactivity and a lot of fun with this, ladies and gentlemen. So our first one up, this is the one I've been wanting to do for a while. Nathalia versus Hydrissea, Hydrissea versus Nathalia, however you want to put it. Who is better? Question mark. Who truly is better? Now, some of you might already be saying, oh, of course it's Hydrissea. She's a beast. She's got a high attack. She's a legendary. She's amazing. She has 2 AoE attacks. She has a trait that's AoE. She's just going to dominate. There's no doubt about it. There's no question about it. Well, here's the thing. If you go check out my channel from 2 or 3 months ago, I believe it was, I made a Nathalia's OP video talking about exactly how you utilize her and make her really good. Now, since then, in soft launch, they have changed her skill set up some to where she's a lot different. Well, I guess not a lot. She's a little bit different than she was before. But in my personal opinion, I think they actually made her better, because you're going to be running her as you will Hydrissea mostly on autopilot for the most part, except for particular stages. And because of that, her new skill set works for her even better than it was back then. So if you thought Nathalia was a monster before, you should get a good look at her today. Now, we already know who the Ice Queen is in this game. That's Mila, aka Mara. I miss Mara. That's a better name in my opinion. Even though she got a big nerf, she's still the Ice Queen. But who's the Water Queen? Who is the Water Queen of the water elements? Is it Hydrissea or Nathalia? Maybe even Celine. I kid. Or maybe. We might have a Celine video down the road. You never know. You never know. But today's video is dedicated to Hydrissea and of course Nathalia. So let's go ahead over to our trusty handy dandy notebook, our aka the index, the Pokédex of Ace. Let's do our search here. We're gonna of course do water, and we're gonna do legendary and epic. So what we have here is a battle between Hydrissea and Nathalia. Who is truly the queen of water, the water queen? Well, Hydrissea, as you guys know, is a legendary. Her base attack stat is 1550 high. 1550 high. Her base attack stat is 1555. There we go. Now, what's important about that is she has a mid to high range S grade attack, whereas when we get to Nathalia, you're going to notice she's also an S, but she's on the lower end of S, where she's actually borderline high A. There is ranges, you know, a low, medium, and high for each of the grades. So make sure you guys keep an eye on that when you're building up units and you're looking for particular stats. Another thing to note that you're going to notice being referenced in a lot of these series, their glyphs are not included in the index. Please keep that in mind. I've had so many people argue with me saying, Josh, the glyphs are included. No, they're not. Whoever's telling you that needs to shut up. They're giving you misinformation, and it's quite annoying. Glyphs are not, I repeat, are not included in the index. These are just the base stats for them fully transcended or awakened, whatever you want to call it, to level 60 with full dupes. So her attack is 1555, and that's before you include glyphs. Now, glyphs can make a big difference. Glyphs could really change the outcome of what these units look like at the end. For example, Kyle, we thought he was actually really, really good and fast until you get to the max glyphs and find out Kyle does not get plus 20 speed on his level 5 glyphs. Windstrex does, so Windstrex ends up being 1 speed higher than Kyle when the dust settles, which is hilarious. And then Joseph is the reverse. He gets even faster and becomes one of the faster units in the entire game as an elite. There you guys go. Glyphs are crazy. But back to the meat and potatoes here. So we have B health, B defense, C speed. So her speed is a little bit suspect, but I'm not going to really hold speed too much against these two particular units, because they're really going to be built more so for just doing damage and not really support. And I feel like support units are the ones that you really want to put speed into as a possible focus point or a priority, if you will. Her crit rate is 8%. So just to save a little bit of time for later explanation, the crit rate is going to be the same for both her and Nathalia. It's going to be 8%. So we don't have to talk about that one again. And we've already talked about the attack stat being slightly lower for Nathalia because she's a lower end S, whereas Hydrissea is a mid to higher end S. So we don't have to talk about that again either. Now, if we go into the trait, you'll notice that she has a 50% chance that anytime she does an attack, she has a bonus chance of doing an 80% AoE. And it's a 50% chance to trigger. So half the time it will, half the time it won't. The laws of probabilities dictate that. So that's really good. That turns a lot of, that turns like her ultimate, that's 100% with 25% splash. That turns it into 180% potentially if the trait triggers. That's really good for an AoE. Outside of that though, she has a pretty low modifier for both her skill 3 and skill 2 for being an AoE attack on a heavy DPS. If it wasn't for her attack stat being so high, she would actually have probably one of the worst AoEs in the game. And I know that's surprising to say, but we're keeping it realistic and truthful around here. Her modifiers are very low for an AoE. It's 100%. There's no way to get around that. It's a low modifier. But because she has such a high attack stat and the possibility of the trait triggering with all of her skills, it makes up for it. Because again, her modifiers are very low. I would say 120 to 150 is more around where I'd like to see my AoEs in the game. Obviously they can't be as high as single targets, but they definitely need to be a little bit higher than just 100, especially for an ultimate. I know there's 25% splash damage, but that's not that much, I guess. But yeah, so again, her modifiers are a little bit slower. Now that speed down on her skill 2 is not always as useful as it might seem either. Because Hydrissea is so slow, she's a C speed, let's get real here. She might not even outspeed the enemies that she hits with speed down, because speed down is -30. It's going to depend on how fast the enemies are. I feel like in PvP, you're going to run into this issue more so than PvE. PvE, I think that -30 will probably be enough to push you and the rest of your team ahead on the following round. But as I said, the way you build her, you don't want there to be a following around outside of like the boss stage, because you want her to go in, hit, and kill them. That's it. You don't want them to survive. So if you don't build her with any kind of speed as a priority or focal point, you're not going to really utilize that speed down as much as you think in PvE. But if you're fighting a lot of like high-end content that you know you can't kill them in one hit, then it might be a bit useful for the following round. As I said, it works sometimes it doesn't. It's just one of those things where the way her speed is personally and the way you build your team is going to really, you know, matter in how effective speed down really is. It can be useful sometimes, it could be not so useful in others. So it is what it is. I just wanted to throw that out there because I know a lot of people are like, oh, speed down, it just works always. No, that's not the case. Sometimes that speed down really won't affect anything. Sometimes it will. I'm just giving you a fair analysis here in this video. Her skill 1, also 100%, which is pretty good for a skill 1. Around 100%, it's pretty much around, it's a standard for a lot of characters in this game. The higher the base attack, obviously makes the skill 1 that much better in terms of damage. You pair her up with William, you know, obviously that becomes a 180 with the chance to do an additional 80 AoE with the trait. So that's a lot of damage potential. And it has it has a 50% chance to apply a speed down as well in skill 1. And I had to make a cut there because I almost coughed up a lung. So I do apologize if you get a weird cut in the middle of that. So overall, she's going to be doing a lot of AoE attacks, potentially with her trait triggering at 50% rate. So that's not bad. That is not bad. Let's go ahead and talk about the other unit, of course, Nathalia. Now, Nathalia, we're gonna be talking a little bit more about this because there's a lot of things that aren't necessarily on the surface here with her and what you can actually do with her damage potential. And what makes this video so good for the first one in the series, because you're looking at a unit that just on paper looks OP versus a unit on paper that, unless you think outside the box and think about team strategy, setup, combos, you may not necessarily think she's as good, especially when you're comparing it to Hydrissea. But I'm gonna give you guys and gals a spoiler alert. Nathalia is actually better, and I mean better. She's more I I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. She's more well-rounded in what her role is for the team and what she can do for you long term. Okay, so let's first talk about her trait. Now, obviously, as I said earlier, her attack is going to be lower than Hydrissea. She's on the lower end of S. She's, you know, 1344, I believe. 1320, maybe a little bit slightly under that, is actually pushing upper A. So, you know, she's right there on the border of that, kind of. Her speed is 5 better, I believe, which, again, we're not going to be really holding speed against either of these units, even though she is faster, and that could be helpful in certain situations. Both have 8% crit, as I said. Now, her HP and defense are a bit more squishy. So, she's definitely going to get hit a bit harder. But the idea is she doesn't get hit because she's going to hit somebody and they're dead. That's the whole point. You don't want her to take too much hits. You just want her to kill everything and it not really matter so much. So on her skill 1, I'm sorry, her trait rather, for every positive effect this character has, their abilities affect 1 extra enemy and damage is increased by 10%. Now, of course, that was changed since the beta slightly. In the beta, she had a skill 2 that allowed her to give herself a plus 50% attack buff and then something else I remember. I can't remember rather. And if she had buffs on her already, she would allow you to actually give that buff to other team members. So her trait kind of worked both ways. She could utilize that for her allies and against the enemies. So it was really, really cool. The problem is you ran her mostly on auto because this is a unit that you don't use her ultimate very often because of the combo we're going to be talking about and what really unlocks her potential. Okay? We're giving her the Gohan treatment. She's going to be ultimate Nathalia. So, yeah. So I like her rework here. It actually, I feel like, makes her a lot better to use on autopilot, which is good because that's how we want to use her mostly. So, yeah. So her trait basically is going to give her an additional 10% damage per buff, as well as being able to hit an additional enemy with all of her skills, which is great because now that turns her skill 1 and her ultimate into AoEs, which if you look already, they're only single targets. 180% damage to an enemy. If this enemy is killed, the ability cooldown is reset, which is awesome. Now, you might use this skill quite a bit on manual gameplay, but in auto, you don't ever have to use it. You're going to be using mostly her skill 1, and we'll talk about why in a little bit. Skill 1. Now, this is where it gets crazy. She, kind of like Hydrissea, only does 100% damage to an enemy and grants random stats up to this character for 1 turn. So the damage comparison, because there is about a 200 base attack gap between her and Hydrissea. Hydrissea's skill 1 will technically do more damage if you compare them straight up. Just you attack one enemy, you attack one enemy. You're going to be doing 100. Hydrissea can do 100 with the potential of an 80% AoE, 50% chance of the time. Or I'm sorry, 50% chance. But Hydrissea, if you don't include the level, the maximum glyphs, she's going to be doing more damage just because her base attack's higher, which means any gear you put on her, her attack stat is just going to be higher, period. If you give them both the same gear, Hydrissea will have the higher attack stat, and that's just common sense. However, you got to include the random stat up first. So you can get an attack up, you can get a crit damage up, because I don't think you're necessarily going to need the crit rate up as much. But regardless, if you get one of those, then you might have a conversation where now straight up Nathalia might do more if that trait doesn't trigger for Hydrissea, because now that 100% damage is going to be equal for both of them. But there might be an opportunity where Nathalia actually squeezes more damage out because she's going to get that additional crit damage up, which is going to be big, or the additional attack up, which could be big. So regardless, if she pops one of those on her skill 1, well, that damage potential is going to be slightly higher than Hydrissea probably in that situation, if Hydrissea does not trigger her trait. But we have to take a few things into account now. We cannot just go straight up comparisons between those two, because here's the thing about Nathalia's kit. The more buff she has, the stronger. Well, I guess you could say the more buff she has, the more buffed she gets. And she gives herself a 1-turn buff regardless every time she pops her skill 1, her basic skill. And what's even better is her passive works with that. Applies attack up and immune for 2 turns. If this character is buffed by a positive effect at the start of their turn, they're going to get a free attack up and immune for 2 turns. And the cooldown is 3 rounds, obviously. Now, that is the only part that sucks, is that it is a 3-round cooldown. That's the only part that sucks. But the good thing is, if she doesn't attack an additional amount of times, and she's only attacking 1 time per round, then you only have to wait 1 round, basically, to be able to trigger that again. Because you're going to have it for 2 turns. She's attacking 1 time per round. That's 2 rounds worth of buffs, and then she'll have another one ready to go after the 3rd round passes. So it's just gonna be 1 gap there, one full round of a gap there, which isn't too bad. But we're gonna be utilizing her a little bit different, because people are looking at that passive and thinking, oh, that's not as great. But there's gonna be a way we're gonna get around it to where we don't need to rely fully on that passive. And what we're gonna be doing is running William. Now, you're gonna be running William with Hydrissea too. Honestly, William, this is just why William is so OP, and we are going to be making a video breaking down William all to himself, a whole video of why he's so OP and why he's top 5 unit in the game, no doubt about it. But you run her with a unit like William, and this is why we're going to be using her skill 1, and this is why this combo is so disgusting. And what's crazy is this combo is not as effective for Hydrissea as it will be for Nathalia. And since William is an epic hero, that makes him another, candidate for being a free-to-play unit. You could actually re-roll for William. You could technically re-roll for William and Nathalia, because you can get 2 epics in your rookie summons. So you can already start this team right off the bat. You could already start building this team if you re-roll, obviously. So, deal is 100%, as we've already mentioned. But that 100% goes up to 180 on her skill 1. Now, Hydrissea gets the same thing if you ran her with William. They both would get 180 on their skill 1 instead of 100. The difference now is that skill 1 for Nathalia can become a full-blown AoE because of her self-given buffs. If her passive triggers, she also gets those additional buffs, whatever buff she's getting from the rest of your team. And here's a nice cheese strat. You run the spell that gives you lethal hit protection with 15% HP recovery. If you run that spell and give it to Nathalia, it stays permanent the entire battle unless she takes a lethal hit. But the whole point is to not take lethal hits for her, because she's a bit squishy with her HP and defense. So in terms of DPS potential, Hydrissea cannot compete with Nathalia, because Nathalia is going to be doing a skill 1 only with William, and you're going to be running William with Hydrissea too, because we're going to keep it fair here. William's going to be in the team for both. So both are going to get stronger skill 1s, except even if you include the 80% damage from the trait, if it triggers for Hydrissea, she still cannot compete with the overall damage for the continuation of the entire fight, because Nathalia can do a few things to really make her broken. Hydrissea really wants to run an Avarice set, because it's going to be slightly better than running 2 attack sets, because 2 of her skills are full-blown AoE, and her trait is AoE, so she's going to make a lot of use out of Avarice. Whereas in Nathalia's case, you're going to be running her with the Curse set, so you can utilize more of her first skills. Now, of course, that's going to make her her passive not as useful, because obviously you're going to be attacking multiple times potentially per round. So she's not going to always have those additional buffs, obviously. So those 2 turns are going to go away pretty quick, but it doesn't matter, because this is what I'm saying. This is our backup option. This is our scapegoat. We don't need to rely on her passive if you run her with Curse set, with William, and all the other things included. And since you can utilize the spell that's permanent on her, she's always going to be hitting at least 2 targets no matter what. And since her skill 1 always gives her a buff too, she's always going to be hitting at least 3 targets no matter what. So her skill 1 at minimum is going to be hitting 3 targets always. And obviously you're going to be running her with other units that also buff as well. They're going to be putting up shields, defense up, HP up, max HP with like a Hackrin, for example, which people are going to be running our defense up with, like if you're running her in a team for other content, like with a Bruzag, or if you're running her with a Connor with the shields and the attack up, you're going to be running her with a gazillion different units that do buffs. That's, and you're going to do the same thing with Hydrissea. So don't come out and be like, oh, Josh, you're kind of giving Nathalia a little bit because, you know, she gets all this, but you're not giving anything to Hydrissea. No, you're going to be running Hydrissea in these same teams. But Nathalia is using more teamwork, if you will. She's getting more from that teamwork. She's getting more synergy than Hydrissea ever could. Because Nathalia becomes stronger and stronger and stronger the better your team is built around her, which is very crazy to think about. She has a very high attack stat for being an epic. We also have to consider the fact that this is an epic versus a legendary. So of course the legendary in most cases, I'm not going to say always, but in most cases the legendary obviously is going to have better stats. But because of the way the skill sets are set up, Nathalia can pull out more DPS. Because this is the combo. Nathalia will be running Curse Set, which will allow her to use her skill 1 potentially multiple times in a single round, which means you're going to be doing multiple AoE based skills in a single round that has no cooldown because it's a skill 1. There is no cooldown, and every single time you're getting an additional 80% damage from William. So you're going to be doing 180, boom, 180, boom. Just like that. You have counterattack because of William, boom, another 180. And then it's time for her to do her attack again and again and again. And by the time it's all said and done and the dust is settled, she has destroyed everything in her path. Because her skill 1 is doing 180% at base because of William, an extra 10% per buff because of her trait. You're going to be having a 200% plus AoE, ladies and gentlemen, on a skill 1 with no cooldown. I repeat, she will have a more than 200% plus AoE on a skill 1 because of William and the fact that she can utilize all the buffs that are given to her. She gives herself a buff with her skill 1. She gets the spell that's permanent, which is always going to give her a buff. Buff from her other units, or buff from the other units in her team. It is absolutely disgusting. Nathalia is better than Hydrissea. You heard me say it. I've said it. It's there. It's out there. And I mean what I say. And I say what I mean. So if there's any doubters, feel free to debate in the comment section below. Try to keep it a little bit classy. Don't get crazy, guys. It don't need to be a bloodbath. You know, you guys can simp for both. But yeah, Nathalia, in my personal opinion, and based on the stats, based on the usability, the overall aspect of what both units can do long term, Nathalia is just simply better because her kit allows her to become stronger and stronger and stronger based on the team around you. And unless you're running a team of 1, it doesn't make any sense. You're going to be running a team of 4 always and forever, unless they allow you to have a team of 5 in the future. I don't know. But as of right now, as it stands, you're running a team of 4, and that team of 4 is going to be best utilized with Nathalia in it than Hydrissea because of what she offers to the team as a DPS. It's just what she can do as an epic hero. It just can't be it can't be underrated. She is such a solid unit. She's got a good kit. She has a good look as well. You can't go wrong with running Nathalia. She's going to be easier to build. She's going to be more free to play friendly. You're going to be able to get more copies of her a lot sooner than you will Hydrissea. You're going to be easier to build. There's not really too much negative I could say about Nathalia outside the fact that she's a bit more squishy because of the C health and defense, obviously. But she's, again, an epic with all this damage potential. And again, the better the team around her, the better she becomes. And she can become even better in the future, depending on what units we get. Which is kind of nuts. So, yes, I wanted to give a little bit more attention to Nathalia in this video because I feel like she deserves it. Everybody's heard all they can hear at this point about Hydrissea. Hydrissea this, Hydrissea that. At the end of the day, Hydrissea is really good. She's strong. She's probably a top 10 unit in the game. No doubt. That doesn't mean she can't be outperformed by a fellow unit of the water element. And that is, of course, Nathalia. So I hope you guys liked today's video. I tried to break it down and give you guys situations in which both these units can be used at maximum potential. As I said, you're going to be running William with both these units, and both of them are going to benefit from it because the skill 1s are going to both be doing crazy damage. Plus, Hydrissea will still have that opportunity to pop off her trait on a skill 1 as well, giving her additional 80% AoE to the whole flock. But Nathalia, man, she's got buffs for days with the team she's going to be in, the way she's going to be utilizing that skill 1 with William, how devastating it'll be. It's just too much. And then you throw curse set on top of that. See, unfortunately, you cannot utilize the curse set on Hydrissea as much because Hydrissea is more built as just a base AoE unit, whereas Nathalia is more based around using her skill 1 more so than her skill 3 in this case, because she has no skill 2 technically because it's a passive. Whereas Hydrissea wants to use her skill 2 and skill 3. So she's better suited with an average set, whereas Nathalia can make full use of the curse set, which only further increases her damage output with her skill 1 alongside the combo of William. So that is why at the end of the day, Nathalia just has more damage potential for you in this game than Hydrissea. So you let me know who you think won the debate and let me know why in the description below. Or I should say who won the battle here. I personally think that Nathalia wins, and I don't want to say that she wins by a large margin. I just want to say that she wins. She edges out Hydrissea. She's cheaper, and she just has a lot more going for her in her kit, and how much more you can expand on that is going to depend on future units too, which is very cool to think about. So if you guys want to see more videos like this where we actually debate or give a little fight between two units that are comparable and what you're going to use them for in certain situations and who comes out on top in the end, let me know. Give me your suggestions in the comment section below. You can go ahead and tweet them to me on Twitter at XSPlays as well. Don't forget to follow me, subscribe to get notifications, join me in the Discord in the description below, and of course, like today's video if you want to see more videos like this in the future. Until next time, peace.